Let's look ahead to this week's slate in college football. Got a really good one on Friday night. Number 10, Utah is at number 19, Oregon State. That USC-Colorado game's lost its shine a little bit. The Trojans, 3-touchdown favorites in that one after Colorado got smoked at Oregon. You got Georgia going on the road to Auburn. That's on CBS.
Why'd you skip the Florida game?
Well, I'm sure you'll be shoehorning that one in here.
SEC's kind of struggling this year.
Oh, is it?
Hey, Kentucky is perfect. Florida is not, but Florida's the ranked team. That's Danny Kanell, high off his Florida State win. That's Brady Quinn, low off what happened with Notre Dame. But we're not going to talk about what happened last week. We're going to look ahead here because Notre Dame has another big game coming up, Brady. They're going to unbeaten Duke. The line is -5.5 in favor of Notre Dame. If you're an Irish player, I mean, is it better to have to get up again for a game like this, a tough one on the road, than maybe just being at home again and playing a cupcake?
Well, you don't have a choice. I mean, the reality is there's two things at play here. One, you got to move on from the mistakes that you had in this past week's game. Everyone's going to look at the final plays. The truth of the matter is there were plays throughout that game where they could have won that game or the outcome could have been changed. So you've got to wipe that clean, move on, take the frustration, anger out on your next opponent. This should be a ticked-off team heading in to take on Duke in a primetime game against a very physical, good Duke team. They're number 2 right now in stop rate on defense. They can run the football. Riley Leonard, their quarterback, is a part of that. So this will be a big-time challenge coming off of a physical battle, Danny, versus Duke. But when I look at these two teams and the way they match up, there's just not enough offensive firepower on the outside from Duke in the passing game, I think, to threaten Notre Dame. And so for that reason, even though Notre Dame's banged up outside, see the freshman right there, Rico Flores, he's going to be able to get a little more shine and more time in there. Jaden Greathouse, the other freshman who stepped up, he's going to get a little more shine this week because Deion Colsey and Jaden Thomas both are most likely not going to play in this one. So for that reason, I still like the Irish. I'm laying the 5.5 points here. I do think it'll be a lower scoring game, though, between both these defenses.
So I was tempted to take Duke, but I mean, just consider Notre Dame's success against the ACC. I'm like, nah, I'm not going to touch that. I'm a little bit different on the total. It was at 50, and then it's kind of come up to 52.5. So the money's kind of expecting a little bit higher score, and it's making me a little bit nervous. But I'll still go ahead and take the over on this one. Here's the reason why, because I think Notre Dame's going to figure it out. I think they're going to come back. I think they'll get back to sort of their offensive ways, you know, with Sam Harton finding those weapons that he's got on the outside, even though they're younger. I think they'll be able to punch it in, unlike Clemson did on the national stage the first week of the season. Remember, they got in the red zone so many times, like in the +5, couple turnovers there. I think Notre Dame finishes those drives. But also, if you remember that game, you mentioned Riley Leonard. I think he's one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the country. He reminds me of Ryan Tannehill. He's just a raw talent running the football. But he's still not an elite passer by any means.
Right.
But he can hurt you with his legs. I think if they're not able to get open on the outside, he can hurt you with his legs and put up some points there. So I'll take the over.
Dana, we're going to talk about your favorite conference now, the SEC.
Okay,
we know how much you love it. LSU and Ole Miss. LSU favored by 2.5, just barely surviving Arkansas this past week. Do you think LSU and Brian Kelly kind of get right, or is Ole Miss going to take advantage of that performance we saw from them last week?
I tell you, Brian Kelly, they better. I can't figure out what LSU is. It's really hard because we saw them against Florida State look really good, you know, and came up short, but I think they represented fine. Then they, like, against Mississippi State, they come out and they just put an absolute. Jalen Daniels looked phenomenal. He was close to perfect. And then they lay this egg, you know, this past weekend and squeak out a victory. It's just like this polar opposite team. I think you'll get their best effort, but here's what I'm more interested in. When's Lane Kiffin going to get like a signature win? Like, he had the 10-win season. Yeah, that's looking further in the rear view. He's been getting awful cocky. I think they have to play backs against the wall. I think he gets it. I like Jackson Dart, what I've seen from him. He's pretty physical. He's able to run the football. They have to get the run game going. They can't ask Jackson Dart to be the majority workhorse in the run game. I think they get it. I think they balance it out a little bit more, which is why I also like the under. I'm taking Ole Miss in the points just from a point of desperation. I also think the SEC, Jacqueline, to your point, I think there's a lot of teams that are going to eat each one another up. I don't know if there's much disparity at the top and the middle like it used to be. You know, Bama, Georgia, everybody else. I think it's all those teams kind of close together.
Yeah, we agree on one thing. That's the under. I think this will be a little bit more of a low-scoring game between these two. But for Ole Miss, it's got to be disappointing. They made so much about that game last week, going into Bryant-Denny, taking on Bama. It looked like Bama was vulnerable, and then Bama did what Bama does. They made enough adjustments. They basically took away the rushing attack for Ole Miss. And you talked about Jackson Dart having to do it all. That's a problem because they don't have the weapons on the outside. I think the matchup with Jaden Daniels and LSU, seeing how prolific he's been through the year, 4 touchdown passes and an interception just a week ago. But Brian Thomas Jr. and really Malik Neighbors has been almost unstoppable. He's been one of the best wide receivers in the country. I don't know that Ole Miss can take him away. And so I think LSU, because of a little bit more balance, Logan Diggs been running extremely well at the running back position too. I think that eventually ekes away at Ole Miss. And so I'm going to lay the 2.5 points here with LSU. I think they're starting to shape into form to try to make a run, obviously, for that SEC West.
That's one of 4 ranked matchups this weekend, but the only one with unbeaten teams is in Austin, Texas. Number 3 Texas hosting number 24 Kansas, off to a surprisingly good start. But I was surprised when I saw this line. Texas minus 17. Brady, normally that means you go that way where Vegas is taking you.
Yeah, and remember the last time Kansas went to Austin, that was a couple of years ago now, shootout.
Yeah.
Kansas shocked everyone. They ended up, beating the Longhorns, and maybe that was considered a low point. This Texas team is in a completely different position right now. This is one of the better defensive teams in the Big 12. We've obviously already seen Quinn Ewers be able to produce on a big stage, and that's not saying that Kansas and Jaden Daniels haven't done a good job this year. It's just I don't see them being able to keep pace and be able to match up with what we're seeing from Texas right now. So it's a big number, but Texas playing at home this year just feels and hits a little bit different for me. And so I'm going to go ahead and lay the 17 points. But honestly, I also like the under in this one. I think you're going to see a lot of points from Texas, not so much for Kansas. I think that defensive front for Texas is going to be able to get after Jaden Daniels, and there won't be quite as much productivity there in the pass game for him.
I was leaning towards Texas. The number just kind of getting a little bit escalated. I was like, I'm going to stay away from that, but I totally agree with you on the under because I do think Texas wins. If it's lower scoring, do they win by that 17 and keep it under the number? I'd rather just take the under. They've shown a tremendous amount of maturity, and the growth of Quinn Ewers, I think it's a great testament to somebody who battled adversity last year, whether injury, on the field or playing. He didn't play that great, and this year he's kind of taken a lot of ownership. He's really stepped into the leadership role for the Longhorns, and I think the last couple weeks are a good example of that. Wyoming, the game was tied up, 4th quarter, steps up, makes a couple big plays, they pull away. Then they have to go on the road to Waco against a surly Baylor team that made their record not be great, but that's a in-state rival that Baylor was going to get their best shot, and Texas dominated them. So I think maybe a little bit of the fatigue of the season sets in, but I'm going to say the under as well. But I would lean towards Texas. I think you're probably on the right side.
All right, next up we have Utah and Oregon State. Utah still 4-0 without Cam Rising. There's been discussion. Is he going to come back? Is he not? Still iffy. Danny, what do you like in this one?
So I used to try to figure out, you follow the lines and say it was Cam Rising playing. Kyle Whittingham protects those, like the information of his quarterback. Oh my gosh, he keeps it under wraps better than anybody.
How much does it matter though with the way they've played without him?
Oh, I think he's a difference maker. I mean, he's one of the better quarterbacks. You don't think it makes a difference?
No, 100% matters. Yeah. Look, Utah right now is last in the Pac-12 in passing. Okay, you get Cam Rising back behind center, that changes everything. They're averaging a little less, I think, than 150 yards per game. Look, Nate Johnson's done a great job, but the reality is this Utah team can't win a Pac-12 championship unless Cam Rising's back. And I don't know when he's coming back, but I'll let you finish your point. They need him in this one.
Yeah, I think they need him too. So our guy Bud Elliott, Cover 3, was looking at the schedule. He has a hunch, this is not anything because no one gets any info, that they're going to try to save him for the bye week, which is just another week or two away. Like, why try to rush him back? Why try to do it if you can? And they're playing with house money at this point. With their schedule to be undefeated at this point against the quality of opponent.
But it's not like they're playing UCLA. A cupcake this week, though.
No, I know they're not. But I just wonder if they try to steal another week of rehab to get him for the home stretch. Because guess what? It doesn't get any easier in the Pac-12, which is the deepest conference we've got going right now. So I'm kind of banking this that he doesn't play. Now, if you all of a sudden, I think the line would move as well. If all of a sudden at game time, Cam Rising starting, I would, go ahead and try to hedge my bet, get away from it, maybe take the under, just maybe there's some rust there. That's what I probably like better is the under.
Yeah, the under is actually my favorite bet in this game, in part because both defenses. I mean, Utah's been outstanding. Okay, last week, UCLA was averaging 290 yards a game. They held them to 9 rushing yards. 9. I mean, it's ridiculous to think what they've done. They held UCLA to 3 of 7 on 3rd down, too. They're the best 3rd down defense. They get off the field. Give all the credit to Morgan Scalley, too, their defensive coordinator. He's done a remarkable job there. And so if they don't have Cam Rising, the defense can strap it up again and continue to keep carrying this team. And Nate Johnson, as long as he doesn't turn over the football, they control the game and can run the football effectively, they can get a win. But this one feels tough. I mean, they're getting 3 on the road. Corvallis is a tough place to play. And Oregon State's got one of the better defenses. I mean, last week, look, almost came back and were able to take down Washington State. You saw Fenwick, too, be a part of the rushing attack. He's one of the better rushers in the Pac-12. It's a big-time challenge. I don't know that you can wait if you want to try to get through the Pac-12 unscathed. I think you got to have a better weapon at quarterback throwing the football down the field. So hopefully Cam Rising's back. He's a fun player to watch, and I think he gives this Utah team a legitimate chance of getting to the playoff if he's healthy and behind center.
So many fun players to watch in the Pac-12, including Washington quarterback Michael Penix, who is one of the front runners for the Heisman Trophy. That's where you're going with your best bet. You're not taking Washington, but you're looking at the game that they have and the total in that one.
Yeah, versus Arizona. Yeah, and this Washington team, we can talk about Michael Penix all we want. He's thrown for over 400 yards per game. I think it's, 15 touchdowns, no interceptions so far. He's been incredible. But the defense, too, for UW has been salty. And I think we tend to lose track of that because they play late at night. They're up in the Pacific Northwest. Well, they're taking on Arizona. This game will be in Tucson. The over-under is set at 67.5. I just see this one where I don't see Arizona scoring many points. I think Washington will do their fair share, but this is one where I think it's going to safely hit the under.
I'd just be nervous about Washington. They're so good offensively. I mean, they're just an absolute aerial attack. Penix is crushing it. I'll go to the SEC, Jacqueline, just for you.
Perfect.
I'm going to go Texas A&M. I've been big on Texas A&M. I know they lost to Miami, but I really like offensively what Petrino has brought to the table. I think they're executing with much more efficiency. It's a little bit modern, more modern than it was under Jimbo Fisher, more quarterback friendly. And even with Connor Wegman out getting dinged up last week, Max Johnson stepped in, tossed a couple touchdown passes. I like where this Texas A&M team is against Arkansas. Arkansas's had a brutal stretch, couple rough losses, back to back. I think this is an opportunity for Texas A&M to come in, kind of establish their dominance, set up a nice game against Alabama here in a couple weeks. I think they do it, so I'll lay the 6.5 with the Aggies.
Okay. A lot of exciting matchups in week 5 of college football here. Danny, Brady, thank you guys so much. We know Danny is going to be sitting in front of his TV watching LSU, Ole Miss, all the SEC games. For more picks in college football, make sure you check out the Cover 3 podcast. The crew is talking Notre Dame, Florida State, Oklahoma, and so much more. You can download and listen wherever you get your pods, or you can scan that QR code.